Shalom, family. Good to see you all here. Hope you're doing well. I just want to send you a reminder at midnight. The brand new botanical oil products will be on sale 35% off. It's already listed out there, it's just not officially on sale until after midnight. So it's the shampoo, the deep conditioner, and the leave in conditioner. So grab it up because I sure have a lot of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, and I think you'll like the fragrance of it as well. So, we're going to talk about Project Freedom, which Donald Trump was going to put into effect until Kuwait and Saudi Arabia told Donald Trump, hell no, you are not using our bases. You're not going to use our airspace. See, he wanted to strike at the Strait of Hormuz, and they all said no, not only Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, but other nations in the Middle East told Donald Trump no. So Project Freedom is dead. He didn't even get it off the ground because nobody is cooperating with the US. And these are allies. These are allies. And they're all saying no, just like the European nations told Donald Trump no. You're not using our bases. You're not using any of our airspace. You're not doing anything. So he's getting the same thing from the Middle East now. So he thought he was going to put this Project Freedom into play, and it ain't going nowhere. It ain't going nowhere. And it just goes to show you how nobody even like or respect the US, and they're not even trying to hide it anymore. You know, what the Middle East nations that were allies are upset about is how Donald Trump and Netanyahu carried out strikes against Iran, and they were never informed about it until it was already in motion. And they're very upset that Donald Trump did not care enough to tell them before dropping the first bomb. He didn't even care enough to tell the allies. And he keeps trying to hide behind, oh, they were getting close to a nuke and all that stuff. No, they weren't. They were no threat to the US. He think if he keeps harping on it like that, then it's justified. It's not justified. It's not. I don't care how he keeps trying to explain it. It's not justified. And I don't blame them for being upset. They gave the US a lot of money for protection. That's why those American bases were over there, because they had promised, they paid the US, and the US promised to keep them safe, and they failed. They failed. So, y'all, let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. Please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Thank you.
News right now. You want to know why Donald Trump's Project Freedom ended just 2 days after it began? Saudi Arabia and other American allies rebuffed him to the point where Saudi Arabia rejected and suspended the US military's ability to use its military bases for Project Freedom. That is significant. According to NBC News right now, Saudi Arabia, a key Gulf ally, suspended the US military's ability to use its airspace and its bases to carry out the operation. And other Gulf states were not happy as well. Even a phone call between MBS, the Saudi Arabian leader, and Donald Trump wasn't enough to smooth over the issues. If you have countries like Saudi Arabia saying no to the United States, you can't use our airspace, and what's happening in Iran, that means the Gulf is fed up. The Gulf is completely fed up. Oil prices are too damn high, right? And they're feeling the brunt of it. They're getting attacked because of what the United States is doing, and they're saying no to the president of the United States. That is a defining moment in this war. I'll have more updates for you soon. Spread the word, follow along for all the news you need to know about.
We do some pretty fascinating revelations. So Trump was apparently forced to back off of quote unquote Operation Freedom in the Strait of Hormuz after Saudi Arabia and Kuwait both said you cannot use our countries for your military maneuvers. So
Spain has blocked the United States from using its airspace and airports. Italy has done the same. Poland has done the same. UK has largely done the same. France has blocked the United States from using its airspace and its air bases. Austria has done the same. Switzerland has done the same. And now we learn that Saudi Arabia banned Donald Trump, banned the United States from using the air base in Riyadh and any other air base in Saudi Arabia, and banned the U.S. from using the airspace above Saudi Arabia after Donald Trump announced Project Freedom on Sunday. And then 24 hours later, Donald Trump said he was withdrawing from Project Freedom because it was so utterly successful. But we learned the real reason that Donald Trump stopped this Project Freedom, which was an absolute failure, was because Saudi Arabia said they would be banning Donald Trump from using Saudi airspace and Saudi air bases. But it wasn't just Saudi Arabia. It was also Kuwait. We're learning that Kuwait said, you can't use our air bases. We're done. No more use of our airspace. And then this was a domino effect. All of the Middle East countries that Donald Trump had done these quid pro quo deals with, whether it was Qatar and Bahrain and even UAE, they all were basically saying, Donald, we're going to ban you as well. And UAE still kind of stayed in it, but guess what happened when they stayed in it? Iran attacked the Fujairah port, which is used by the UAE to try to circumvent the Hormuz control that Iran has. Also, you had a UAE tanker that was struck by Iran after Donald Trump announced Project Freedom, as well as a South Korean tanker. And in addition to all of these countries banning Donald Trump and banning the United States now from using the air bases and airspace in the countries, NATO is basically preparing for a post-U.S. life. Whether they're calling it new NATO or Europe NATO, but a NATO if Donald Trump does indeed withdraw from NATO. And one of the things that NATO is also doing right now is they're no longer having meetings until the end of Donald Trump's term. They may have to do one or two in term. They're doing meetings with the military people and lower level people. But when it comes to like high level leaders of countries, NATO's done doing that. They're not doing it anymore because they don't want the drama with Donald Trump. They don't want him showing up. And they just said it's, just keep Donald Trump away from NATO. That's the best thing that could possibly be done. And Donald Trump and his regime, Hegseth, Rubio, others continue to attack NATO each and every day. I mean, this news that Saudi Arabia and Kuwait were blocking Donald Trump and the United States from using the air bases and the airspace, was really a bombshell news that dropped late last night. A lot of people were saying, okay, so Donald Trump announced this Project Freedom, and he said that he was going to bring the American Navy into the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, we've heard this from him before, and then help all of the tankers and cargo ships as part of a humanitarian mission leave the Strait of Hormuz. And then there was that bizarre press conference with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Kane, as well as Pete Hegseth, and they were like lying, and they were like, hundreds of ships are now currently exiting the Strait of Hormuz. We are currently leading them through a safe passage. And it's like, yeah, that's not happening. 2 ships were destroyed by Iran that even tried. When the U.S. Navy tried to get in there, Iran shot warning shots, and then the 2 Navy ships turned around. We have satellite images, folks. We know whether or not the U.S. Navy successfully leading hundreds of ships. No, it's like 1 ship left the Strait of Hormuz, and that was through the Iranian passage. It was allied with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz is firmly under Iran's control. But then we learned, NBC got the exclusive yesterday, hat tip to them, that MBS, the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, was livid when Donald Trump announced this Project Freedom, which was an escalatory measure. MBS and the head of Kuwait, and all of the royal families in the Middle East said, look, this is an escalatory measure, or at best it creates escalatory ambiguity. Iran's going to escalate. Like, you're going to provoke them. And it's exactly what Iran did. And these Middle East countries are reeling right now. I mean, they are really suffering. Donald Trump and the United States promised them a security umbrella. They did all of these quid pro quo deals with Donald Trump, not because they like Donald Trump, but because that's how Donald Trump projected the security umbrella of the U.S. You need to pay me personally tribute. Qatar, you got to give me a 747 jet. Saudi Arabia, you got to do hotel deals with me. UAE, Dubai, you've got to do deals with me. You got to put money into my World Liberty financial crypto thing. And so he would go around, and they thought that they were getting protection. And when push came to shove, not only did they not get protection, Donald Trump didn't warn them in late February when he and Netanyahu went it alone and had this unlawful and catastrophic war criminal invasion of Iran and started blowing up elementary schools, killing little girls, and lighting the entire Middle East on fire. And these Middle East countries were like, hello, you're not going to even give us a heads up, yet alone we should coordinate this together. And of course, Donald Trump didn't tell NATO. He didn't tell anyone other than Netanyahu. And then the United States officially put it in their State Department position paper. They said this is a legally justified war because this is word for word, basically what it says. Iran's been at war with Israel, an ally of the United States, for 47 years. And thus the U.S., to protect Israel, doesn't need any further justification to go to war with Iran. I mean, that's literally the State Department's position. And so it finally seemed, okay, are we moving closer to resolution? Are we moving closer to potentially a deal? Then Donald Trump on Sunday fires off this Project Freedom thing and talks about bringing Navy ships and escorting ships out of the Persian Gulf and out of the Strait of Hormuz. And then people in the military had, military leaders, generals, admirals had to walk it back a little bit and say, no, this isn't a new operation that we're launching. This is actually part of something we announced last week. It's defensive in nature. It's a humanitarian. We're not actually going into the Strait of Hormuz. We're just going to help insurance companies, and we're going to help ships there learn the latest updates when the Strait of Hormuz opens. But then Donald Trump and Hexit were like, nope, this is a new mission. We're going in. And no one knew what the hell was going on. Iran attacked the port of Fujairah, attacked the two ships, the South Korean ship and the UAE ship. And then things were escalating. And Saudi Arabia's like, boom, we're shutting down our airspace. Kuwait's like, boom, we're shutting down our airspace. And as I mentioned before, they joined Spain and Italy and Poland and UK and France and Austria and Switzerland.
Let me tell you, if there's a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after drinks with friends, it's with pre-alcohol. Look, I'm not 21 anymore. So-called Project Freedom reportedly collapsed in about 24 hours after Saudi Arabia blocked the U.S. military from using key Saudi bases and airspace for the operation. This is some crazy reporting from NBC News. Here's what reportedly happened. Trump announced the new military operation in the Strait of Hormuz, claiming that the U.S. would help escort ships through the area as tensions were escalating. That took effect Monday, and by Tuesday, Trump put it on pause, and he did this whole post saying it was a huge military success, even though no ships were transported through. But according to this new NBC reporting, Trump actually scrapped the operation because Saudi leadership was furious that Trump launched this without properly coordinating with them first. The report says that Saudi Arabia then informed the U.S. military that it could not fly any aircraft out of Prince Sultan Air Base or even through Saudi airspace to support the mission. That's a huge deal because the operation reportedly depended on U.S. fighter jets, refueling aircraft, and surveillance flights operating in that exact airspace. That's right, the Saudis banned Trump from using their bases or airspace. This is wild. NBC also reports that Trump personally called Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, but the dispute was not resolved, and Trump was ultimately forced to pause the operation. This is absolutely wild. The
United States has had to pause Project Freedom, the operation to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, because Saudi Arabia has stopped letting us use their air bases. This is pretty significant. I'm not sure anything like this has ever happened before. And it's a great reminder that while we may have the strongest military in the world, what made it even stronger was our ability to rely on our allies. Now that we become so unpredictable because our foreign policy completely is decided by what goes on in between the 2 years of Donald Trump, these other countries, which are massive, massive systems in their own right, they can't plan for what the guy is going to think. Even this week, you had the UAE getting bombed by Iran. Iran hit their Fujairah, I believe, oil fields, which is the only oil field, I guess, that actually bypasses the Strait of Hormuz with a pipeline in the country. And Trump said Iran bombing the Emiratis was not a violation of the ceasefire. And the Emiratis were like, what the fuck? Like, we're just all on our own now. It's happening so quickly, the breakdown of American diplomatic excellence, the dismantling, really, of our diplomatic apparatus. Basically, to sum it up, Trump is like a monkey that reached into a tree to get a banana, and he doesn't realize that he can't pull his hand out of the tree, the hole in the tree, without giving up the banana. And he's just screeching, give me a banana, give me a banana. But it's like, it's not possible. He has to let go of the banana to be free. And meanwhile, he's being hit by drones. On top of this, to further the humiliation, you have Marco Rubio crying to the UN saying, do something, do something. The Iranians are breaking international law. 2 months ago, they were like, who gives a fuck about international law? We're going to do this shit by ourselves. And now we have to crawl back to the UN, who can't do anything in this situation. We've utterly fucked it.
So this is absolutely stunning. Donald Trump's so-called Project Freedom reportedly collapsed in about 24 hours after Saudi Arabia blocked the U.S. military from using key Saudi bases and airspace for the operation. This is some crazy reporting from NBC News. Here's what reportedly happened. Trump announced the new military operation in the Strait of Hormuz, claiming that the U.S. would help escort ships through the area as tensions were escalating. That took effect Monday, and by Tuesday, Trump put it on pause, and he did this whole post saying it was a huge military success, even though no ships were transported through. But according to this new NBC reporting, Trump actually scrapped the operation because Saudi leadership was furious that Trump launched this without properly coordinating with them first. The report says that Saudi Arabia then informed the U.S. military that it could not fly any aircraft out of Prince Sultan Air Base or even through Saudi airspace to support the mission. That's a huge deal because the operation reportedly depended on U.S. fighter jets, refueling aircraft, and surveillance flights operating in that exact airspace. That's right, the Saudis banned Trump from using their bases or airspace. This is wild. NBC also reports that Trump personally called Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, but the dispute was not resolved, and Trump was ultimately forced to pause the operation. This is absolutely wild that the President of the United States announces a major military operation before securing cooperation from the Saudis, and the whole thing immediately starts falling apart. And then Trump tries to spike the football and call the whole thing a win. What a huge embarrassment. We'll keep following the story. Follow for more updates and listen to the Midas Touch podcast for more. We've got new episodes out now. Check them out.
Breaking news coming out of Saudi Arabia and the USA. Saudi Arabia blocks the U.S. military from using its bases and airspace for the operation linked to the Strait of Hormuz, according to NBC. Now, for those of y'all that don't know what this is, this was the Operation Project Freedom, all right? So Saudi Arabia denied U.S. access to its airspace, pressured Trump to pause Project Freedom. During the U.S. Operation Epic Fury against Iran and before the ongoing temporary U.S.-Iran ceasefire, Saudi Arabia allowed the U.S. to fly aircraft from the Prince Sultan Air Base. The article continues, U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to pause a U.S. operation to guide ships through the Strait of Hormuz came as a result of pressure from Saudi Arabia, according to an NBC News report citing two U.S. officials. Now, for those of y'all that don't know which operation this is, this was the Project Freedom, where Trump wanted to forcefully make his way into the Strait of Hormuz to bring ships out of the Strait of Hormuz that have been parked for so long. And I got to say, W Saudi Arabia, all right? W Saudi Arabia for not enabling President Trump, all right? Even though Saudi Arabia was enabling President Trump, especially in the month of February. And I got to say to all of the Saudis that tried to call me a liar, you owe me an apology, all right? You can apologize later, but for right now, I got to say congratulations to MBS, because these are the actions that have been needed in February and March and in April. But you know what? I'm happy that he's making the right decision right now, because the more people that enable this man, the crazier things that he will do. The less people that will enable him, the less crazy things that he will do. And for the people that were wondering and asking about sources, Satellite images show more aircraft at Saudi airbase used by U.S. forces. This was not only on February 17th, February 21st, and February 27th as well. Satellite images showed a rise in the number of military support aircraft, including refueling tankers at a Saudi airbase used by the U.S. military during a 4-day period in February as Washington built forces in the region amid tensions with Iran. Like I said, to all of the Saudis that tried to call me a liar, you owe me an apology, but apologize on your own time or whatever the situation is. Good job, MBS. Good job, MBS, for not enabling this madman that we have in office. Let me know what y'all think about this situation. It is 3:02 a.m., May 7th, 2026. Follow me for more updates, breaking news, think pieces, and beyond.
You know why Donald Trump ended his Project Freedom after only 36 hours? It's because Saudi Arabia got angry at him. Remember, Trump announced Project Freedom on social media Sunday out of nowhere, apparently without consulting with any of our Gulf allies. So in response, Saudi Arabia banned us from flying through their airspace and using critical bases. And since a call between Trump and the Saudi crown prince didn't resolve the issue, he was forced to pause Project Freedom. Other Gulf allies were also caught off guard. Trump didn't speak to leaders in Qatar until after the effort had already begun. And a Middle Eastern diplomat said the U.S. did not coordinate Project Freedom with the Omanis either. Project Freedom only lasted for 36 hours, but within that short period of time, we weakened our relationship with our allies in the middle of a war and also escalated tensions with Iran. Despite all of this, Trump still had the nerve to post on Truth Social, pretending like this entire operation was a huge success and great progress had been made. Trump pretends to be a strong leader, but it turns out foreign countries have been pushing him around left and right since this war began.
Well, he's just doing what he always does. He gets in the media and he lies. So, yeah, that's embarrassing. The president of the United States, the one that was leading the most powerful nation on earth. Now, everybody knows that's not true anymore after Iran kicked their ass, but I'm just saying. And now the Saudis, who always been very generous towards many of the US presidents, all of a sudden they got angry with Donald Trump and snapped on him and told him, no, you are not using our bases. You are not using our air. You ain't doing shit over here, man. And now the others joined in. It is literally no one left on the side of the US. And you heard what Marco Rubio did. First of all, when they first went in there and bombed, didn't Donald Trump say he wanted to get out of the NATO? He didn't want nothing to do with NATO. He wanted to pull the US out of NATO. Now they're begging for NATO to help. Boy, how embarrassing. How embarrassing. Yeah. But see, the Most High is doing this. The Most High is making America be completely isolated. We are isolated, y'all. We are isolated. There is no one coming to help us. We have a president that ran his mouth so bad that he isolated the entire world from us. We are literally sitting here on our own with a madman leading the country. You can't make it up. You can't make it up. And now you got to add that on top of the fact that no country will buy from the US. Isn't that also prophecy? Nobody will buy from the US. Nobody will buy US goods. So that being said, and just looking at the circumstances, we are screwed, y'all. We are screwed. At this point, I think if America got bombed, nobody is going to help. I'm serious. If America got attacked right now, I don't believe any nation would stand up to help at this point because no one likes Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has completely tarnished the reputation of America. Not that it was all that good, but it's far worse now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And these folks are still on videos crying their eyes out about not having any money, not having this, and their jobs are gone. Well, y'all voted for Donald Trump, and I have to agree with what a lot of people are saying on these videos. They're saying Donald Trump is a white people's problem. And it really is. Y'all were the ones that put that man in office. Now look at the nation. And some of y'all were laughing. Grocery prices. I ain't worried about no grocery prices. Where are you folks now? I don't see y'all out here. You know why? Because you're embarrassed. Y'all were talking about you weren't worried about no prices. Now, where are you folks now? How come I don't see or hear from y'all anymore? Did y'all fall in the abyss? Probably did. That's where creatures go. So, y'all, I just think, boy, we could not have made this up even if we wanted to. I think Donald Trump has done more damage in less than a year and a half than any other president that sat in office before him. I don't think I've ever seen them do this much damage in a year like he did. So I guess Project 2025, and now it's Project 2026. It's just not going, all the way to plan. There's a lot of gaps in there. Things just didn't work out. But Donald Trump, you ain't got to worry about destroying the US. The US is already destroyed. This economy is never coming back, y'all. Everybody that's looking for this bounce and prices going down, prices ain't going down, y'all. It ain't going down. The damage is done this time around. There is no prices coming down, even when we get into 2027. Even when we get to 2027, prices are not going to come down. The job market is not going to get better. The housing market is not going to get better. It is none of this stuff is going to get better. Food prices are still going to be up in 2027. Donald Trump ain't thinking about this. You know what he's thinking about? His ballroom and that damn bunker he has, building this mile wide bunker underground. That's all he's concerned about. He don't care about what happens to everybody else. He could care less. He doesn't care. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. And we'll do this all over again on another live. Shalom, family.